Hi again. Another in the series on the South African conflict, and the book we're talking about today, Iron Fist from the Sea, covers the Maritime Special Force Unit. The authors of the book, Colonel Steyn and Commander Soderlund, both served in various capacities with that unit. Colonel Steyn was the ops officer, and Commander Soderlund was in charge of the South African Navy's task group. So they have a unique insight and access to the records of the unit. Now, right from the birth of the South African Special Forces by Colonel Breitenbach, it was realised that they needed a maritime capacity based on historical reasons that other special forces from around the world tended to have used coming in from the sea and using coastal delivery means to achieve a target. So it really was built into it, and they trained. They sent a group to France to train at Ajaccio with the French attack divers there, and when they first started this aspect, they really didn't have much source of information. They didn't really have access to any other special force units, South Africa being rather isolated. Later on, they did train with the Israelis, and they, as I say, they sent a group to France. But the initial work paddling about in canoes and so on, among their source materials was the movie The Cockleshell Heroes, about the Royal Marines canoe attacks in the Bordeaux estuary during World War II. Unfortunately, this is one of the most inaccurate war films ever made. It didn't really reflect the training and the methodology of that particular operation. So it really was the blind leading the blind. But fortunately, they were able to access more professional sources from within the South African Navy with their diving school at Simonstown, and as I said, the French in Corsica. So the Special Forces split into three groups, and Charlie Group was the maritime component, and they went to Langevan in the Cape and set up a base there, and started experimenting, working with different strike craft and working with the submarines, the South African submarines, the Emily Hobhouse and the Maria van Riebeck. So this grew then into 4 Recce Commando when the reorganisation took place, and they were numbered. So 4 Recce was the maritime unit, and they did a lot of operations: Angola, bridge attacks, sabotage, that kind of thing. South Africa, Southern Africa has a long coast, and moving from South Africa to targets in Namibia and targets in Angola, or on the other side, targets in Mozambique, wasn't that hard to do, particularly since Angola, for example, did not have much in the way of maritime sophisticated defences. One of the operations that the South Africans took part in was when they assisted the Rhodesians. They went in as D Squadron of the Rhodesian SAS, and 4 Recce did their rotations too. And one of the operations, and it is included in the book, but it's one that I have a little bit of insight into, took place going across Kariba towards Siavonga, and a friend of mine, Dave Haig, who worked with us in the UK, both before and after, he had come out to Rhodesia with us in '77, but he stayed and joined the army. He was a former Royal Marine, and he in the Marines he was a cox on rigid raiders and so on. So they used the Army boat squadron, which Dave was a member of, to transport the operators across Kariba, and a group from 4 Recce were going to hit a target, and on the extraction coming back, the outboard stopped and they were taking fire, and it was a tense time. I think they had to change motors, put the spare engine on, get that going, and they came back. And one of the guys had an AK round crease his skull, and Dave took a photo of it, and I used to use it on the bodyguard medical slides lecture. So that was just a little bit of news from the inside. The officer involved, David Ferry, actually also wrote to us from Langebaan when we first started doing the bodyguard training. He was interested in some details of that, and I was quite happy to chat to him about that. Another significant operation that they did, and it was kind of a reverse role to the one I've just talked about, where 4 Recce were doing the actual transport, and the SAS, where the strike force was Operation Milk Float, where they tried to kill Mugabe in Mozambique. And Graham Wilson, the famous Phantom Major who got the Grand Cross of Valor, was in charge of the SAS side of it, and they used South African boats to go up, go in, and unfortunately Mugabe wasn't there. I think they tried it twice. There's a strong suspicion that he was tipped off. There were various spies, double agents and traitors working inside combined operations and passing information to British intelligence. We had a chap come on our bodyguard course in South Africa, John, who was a member of the Special Forces. After '94, they were consolidated, and they each became, they kept the numbers. 1 was disbanded, 2 was disbanded, but 4 and 5 were kept as Special Force regiments. So 4 Special Forces was still the old 4 Commando. And John was an operator with them, and he told us that they were doing more cooperation, and they had worked with UK Special Forces, and he said they were, the South Africans were quite amazed at some of the methods. For example, recovering a boat from the water by dropping the tailgate of a Chinook in the water and having the boat rev into the Chinook and then take off. They hadn't been aware of that technique, mainly because the South Africans didn't have Chinooks. They were using the Oryx or the Puma, their version of the Puma, which doesn't have a tailgate. So there was. He also told us that after '94, with the ANC government, they had this thing. It's called and there were a number of instances where standards were lowered, and it's never a good thing. So one of the things they did with the special forces was to relax the swimming standards. And as John said, when you have a maritime unit and the guys can't swim, they just drown. He said, and that's what was happening. He was saying, these new guys in, and they were just drowning in the sea. So that's just you know how maybe if it's not broke, don't fix it. The book, because of the status of the authors, one being the ops officer and the other being from the naval task group side, they had access to all the official reports, so the detail is amazing. It's probably arguably the most detailed book so far on special force operations in Southern Africa, albeit restricted to that one particular unit. Again, it's a really good insight into one particular part of the special force conflict in Southern Africa.